Hello, it's Dr. Jake Cleveland, and I'm here today to talk to you about an underutilized tool, storytelling. Now, we've all been in a situation before where we bought into something not because of the PowerPoint, not because of the price, not because it was easy, not because we liked the person, but because of the story that they told. Maybe the story had us on the edge of our seats. Maybe we were completely bought into the success or the failure of the individual. Maybe we were worried about the outcome of the individual's success, right? That's the gift of storytelling. Some people are natural storytellers and they've just always been good at it, and some people aren't as much that way. But the good thing is storytelling is a skill that anybody can develop. And once developed, you can use it in any setting. If you're a coach needing to motivate your team, you tell a story. If you're a parent trying to stress a safety measure for your child, storytelling. If you're a clinician trying to communicate something important to a patient, storytelling. Now, storytelling is absolutely important and it's absolutely possible, but we've also all been in this situation before where the story wasn't told well. Today, I want to talk about three different ways, three basic principles of a good story, a strong story that will help you develop the skill and put it into practice in your own life. First, every story has to have a clear message. And it's okay to call the message out at the very beginning, but every story needs to have a clear message. Your listeners need to know what they're being told. They need to understand why this is even a topic of discussion, right? Have you ever been in a situation where someone's telling a story and you have no clue what it's about? I'm there often with my small children. They're telling me a story and I clearly have no clue what this has to do. It has to have a clear communicated message. It has to have meat and potatoes to it, right? The second is it has to be connective and it can be creative. This is the fun part, right? Your audience is your audience for a reason. When we're telling this story, it needs to have a message, but it needs to have a message that connects with the audience specifically. Your audience will change maybe how you tell the story, or it will change what points you stress in order to connect with them, but it still has to land with them. It has to connect. There has to be that resonance there. And the fun part is, depending on your creative ability, you can be creative. Some of the best stories are movies or songs or poems. But if you're not that artistic type like me, you rely on the spoken word to tell the story, right? Think about it this way. If a preacher's ending his sermon as he does and he tells a story, but it doesn't relate to anybody, and it's not creative, it's dry, it's boring, it's not going to land. It's not going to draw you in. It's not going to be a good conclusion. Your story has to connect with the audience, which requires you to know the audience, but it also should involve some level of creativity to keep people engaged. You can have a message, you can have something that directly applies, but that creativity is what draws them in. Third, and one of the most important, is it needs to have a value proposition. When you're in a position where it's a bit of a negotiation or you're trying to communicate a story in order to get X, Y, and Z accomplished, to get somebody to buy in, to take your advice, to buy your product, whatever it might be, you have to have a value proposition. It has to say, if you participate in this, or if the moral of the story applies to you, then this is how it adds value to your life. You see this all the time in sales negotiations, right? In sales tactics and sales pitches. There's a value in, if you purchase this, then your life is improved by doing this. But within the value proposition, there's two things. It's not just, hey, buy my product, or hey, take your medicine. First, we need an emotional appeal. That's part of the connection, right? That's how we connect with the audience. We don't just start the emotional appeal when it's time to deliver the value proposition. We actually start it from the very beginning. But the emotional appeal is, how do we connect with this person? One thing that always gets me as a grown man are military coming home videos, right? There's the emotional appeal of a dad, a mom who's been away forever. They come home. I don't have to understand anything else, but I know within the context of this story here, mom or dad's been away for a long time. They see their child again, or their parent or their spouse as a surprise, and then the tears flow, right? That's the emotional appeal. That emotion that draws us towards this character or against the antagonist. It's what draws us in and gets us emotional. Emotional appeal is what gets people to buy in often. You can have the best product out there, but if you're not able to connect with your audience and generate some emotional appeal, you're going to struggle to get that buy-in. Those who have emotional appeal tend to succeed in their storytelling more. But also within the value proposition, you have to have the appropriate energy. You can tell the best story, it can have all the boxes checked, but if it's not the right energy that you bring, you're going to struggle. I once told a story to try to get donations for a foundation I worked with to a 6 a.m. emergency department meeting. Now, I'm a pretty bubbly guy. I'm a pretty high energy guy. And I walked into this 6 a.m. meeting, whereas I'm up at 4 a.m. usually. So I'd already been up. I had been caffeinated. I got a workout in, and I stepped into this room and I told a great message. I connected with the audience. This is why it's important to you. I had the emotional appeal going, but my energy was so loud at a 6 a.m. meeting. I had a physician that had just worked that night shift, and it was a rough night shift for him, pull me aside and said, "You've got to calm down. You are way too high energy for 6 a.m. when I'm coming off of a brutal night shift." That was a reminder for me. I can have all of this right, but if my delivery is off due to the energy, it's not going to land. It's not going to be good. I can miss everything else if I have the wrong energy. And lastly, number 4, storytellers have to land the plane. Again, think of a time where somebody's story, it could have been a good story, but it just went on and on and on. It could have ended 10 minutes ago, but they keep going on and on and on. We have to know when to land the plane. Now, usually landing the plane, just like in a movie, just like in a song, it's after, the pinnacle, the apex of the story. So when you present that value proposition, when you've got the emotional appeal, when you either reveal the success or the failure of the protagonist or the antagonist of the story, when the main subject reaches their point and you get the answers, land the plane shortly after that. Land the plane. Don't let it drudge on and on and on. If you're a preacher and you're preaching a sermon and you've got people hooked and you get your point across, but then you go another 20 minutes of your sermon, you're going to lose the people. You could have stopped then and been more successful in your delivery. So again, with storytelling and its direct application to all that you do, 4 key components. It has to have a clear message. It's got to connect and should be creative. It needs to have a value proposition. This is what you get if you apply the main principle here. But that value proposition needs to have the emotional appeal and the appropriate energy. And then lastly, land the plane. People want to buy in. They need to buy in. And storytelling is a great way to get your message across and get people to buy into the work that you are doing. Thank you.